What you are about to hear changed the life of one of the most successful men in Boston forever. A man who had everything, but was losing the only thing that truly mattered, and a 7-year-old girl who knew things no one could possibly know. This is the story of Marcus and Helen Sullivan, and of the miracle of the Virgin Mary that no one expected. But before we continue, leave a comment saying where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I'd love to see how far the miracles of the Virgin Mary are reaching. Marcus Sullivan was 48 years old and owned one of the most respected investment firms in Boston, 30 years building his empire, clients who moved millions, an impeccable reputation in the financial market. You know that kind of man, the one who measures his own worth by the size of his bank account? Marcus was that man. His house was worth $4 million, a 1920s mansion in one of the city's most exclusive neighborhoods, gardens that required 3 gardeners to maintain, a garage with 3 imported cars he rarely drove because he was always working, the kind of place that makes you think, this guy has everything. But did he? It was 11 p.m. on a Monday night. Marcus sat in his upstairs office, 3 monitors on, phone vibrating every 2 minutes. Numbers, graphs, reports. The door opened. Helen stood in the doorway, wearing her nightgown, brown hair loose over her shoulders. She had that tired expression of someone who had given up on arguing. "Are you coming to bed?" Marcus typed another line in the email. "I'll be right there, just need to finish this." The same answer as always. Helen stood there for 5, maybe 10 seconds, waiting for something, a glance, a word, any sign that he remembered she existed. But Marcus was already deep into another spreadsheet, another number, another problem. She closed the door without a sound. Marcus didn't even notice. Helen Sullivan was 45. She had been an architect, a good one, in fact. She had won awards, worked on important projects, but she stopped working 5 years ago. Now her days were silent, long. The huge mansion echoed with her footsteps. The only place Helen truly loved was the garden in the back, yellow daisies, hundreds of them. She had planted each one with her own hands. She woke up early to water them, spent afternoons pulling out weeds, whispering softly to the flowers as if they could answer. It was the only place she still felt alive. 6 months ago, Helen began to feel something different, a fatigue that wouldn't go away no matter how much she slept. She woke up exhausted, spent the whole day wanting to lie down. Then came the pain, subtle at first, easy to ignore, until she couldn't anymore. The tests showed something serious, a liver problem, progressive. Marcus reacted the only way he knew how, with money and action. He hired the best specialist. He paid for treatments at private clinics with 6-month waiting lists, but they made an exception when they saw how much he was willing to pay. "We're going to fix this," Marcus told Helen. He was reading emails on his phone as he spoke. "I have the best doctors taking care of you. Don't worry." Aura. Helen began the treatments the following week. Marcus didn't go to the first session, an important meeting with Japanese investors, nor to the second, a conference in Chicago, nor to the third, an urgent problem with a client. Helen went alone. She sat alone in the waiting room. She received the treatment alone. She came home alone, nauseated, trembling, holding back tears until she closed the bedroom door. And Marcus would ask at dinner, without lifting his eyes from the laptop, "How was it today?" "Fine," Helen lied. "Great." And that was all. The Sullivan Mansion stood in one of the city's oldest and most elegant neighborhoods, cobblestone streets, historic houses, centenary trees forming green tunnels in the summer. The neighbors greeted each other politely as they passed. Good morning, good afternoon. But no one really knew anyone. Each lived locked inside their own world, behind high walls and automatic gates. In front of the Sullivan property there was a stone wall, original from 1920, when the house was built. Beautiful, rustic, well preserved. And at the center of the wall, facing the sidewalk, there was a niche. Inside the niche, a statue of the Virgin Mary, Italian marble, blue mantle, hands in a prayer position, serene expression. Marcus's great-grandfather, Lorenzo Sullivan, an Italian immigrant who made his fortune importing wines, had placed that image there when he bought the property, a tradition, a blessing, a protection for the family that would live in that house. But it had been more than 30 years since anyone had paid attention to that statue. The white marble had turned gray. Dark green moss grew in the folds of the mantle. A crack ran through the right arm. Dry leaves had gathered at her feet. Marcus passed that statue every day when he left by car. He never looked. It was just part of the wall, part of the scenery, something that had always been there and that he had never thought to question. Just like Helen, actually. Always there. And he never truly looked. 8 blocks away, in a very different part of the city, stood a group of 3-story apartment buildings. Apartment 2B, the Chen family. Sarah Chen was 7 years old. Her public school uniform was always clean, but clearly old. A backpack with mended straps, shoes too big because they needed to last at least 2 years. Her mother, Linda Chen, worked as a nurse, 12-hour shifts. Sometimes she took extra ones. Her father, David, was a truck driver, long routes. He would be gone for 2, sometimes 3 weeks straight. He came back for 3 days, watched his daughter grow in leaps, and left again. Sarah was responsible for her age. She had to be. She came home from school alone, heated up the lunch her mother left in the fridge, did her homework at the kitchen table, alone. While the sun disappeared through the window, she was a quiet girl, observant. But Sarah had something special. Since she was little, she had a deep devotion to the Virgin Mary. She prayed alone in her room before bed. She kept a small image under her pillow. She spoke softly to her when she was sad or afraid. And sometimes Sarah had dreams that felt very real. It was a Tuesday in March, 3:30 in the afternoon. Sarah was walking home from school as always, her backpack heavy on her shoulders, following the path she knew by heart. But that day she felt something different, a desire, an impulse, to turn left instead of going straight. Sarah hesitated. That wasn't the way home. It was longer. It passed through streets she didn't know very well, but the feeling was strong, persistent. She turned left. She walked through blocks that became more and more beautiful. Bigger houses, more expensive cars, cleaner streets. And then she saw it, a statue on a wall. Sarah stopped on the sidewalk as if she had hit an invisible wall. The Virgin Mary, covered in dirt, cracked, forgotten. And Sarah felt something tighten in her chest, a deep sadness that wasn't hers. She approached slowly, touched the cold marble with her fingertips. "You're so dirty." Sarah stayed there for a few minutes, just looking, feeling that strange sadness. Then she went home. The next day, before leaving for school, Sarah took an old rag from the kitchen, stuffed it in her backpack. When classes ended at 3:15, she didn't go straight home. She went back to that street. 3:30. She was standing in front of the mansion. She took the rag out of her backpack, climbed onto the edge of the wall, and began to clean. She wiped away the stains, removed leaves, cleaned off the moss. And as she cleaned, she prayed softly. Marcus was in his office, a tedious call with a client complaining about profits. He was half listening, half staring at spreadsheets. Something caught his attention through the window. A child, a little girl, school uniform, in front of his house. He frowned. What was she doing there? He watched for a minute, 2 minutes. The girl was cleaning the statue? Marcus hung up the call, went down the stairs, opened the front door forcefully. The noise made Sarah turn around, startled. A tall man, expensive suit, stern expression, walking toward her with quick steps. Sarah climbed down from the wall quickly, but stayed there. She didn't run. "What are you doing?" His voice was firm, controlled, the kind of voice that makes employees tremble. Sarah gripped the strap of her backpack tightly. "I'm cleaning." "Cleaning what?" "The statue. It was very dirty." Marcus looked at the statue as if seeing it for the first time. "And why are you doing that?" Because it needed to be clean." Marcus crossed his arms. That child was on his property. Well, technically on the sidewalk, but still. "Look, I don't know what you're doing, but this is my house. I don't want strange kids here." Sarah looked up at him with those big, honest eyes. "But I need to come every day." "Why?" "To pray." Marcus almost laughed. "Pray?" "For a lady who's sick." Marcus took a deep breath. "All right. Look, I don't know what kind of game this is, but—" "It's not a game, sir." Her voice was serious, too steady for a 7-year-old child. Marcus remained silent. The girl truly believed what she was saying, completely. "What's your name?" "Sarah." "Sarah, do you live around here?" "Not too far." "Do your parents know you're here?" Sarah shook her head. "My mom's working, but she won't mind." Marcus ran a hand over his face. He didn't have the patience for this. "Do whatever you want. Just don't bother anyone." He turned his back and began climbing the steps. But before closing the door, he looked back once. Sarah was already kneeling on the sidewalk, hands together, eyes closed, whispering a prayer with a devotion Marcus hadn't seen in decades. Something tightened in his chest. He closed the door. Thursday, 3:30 in the afternoon. Marcus was working when he heard light footsteps on the sidewalk. He looked out the window. There she was, Sarah, same backpack, same uniform, same cloth in her hand, cleaning the statue, praying. Marcus tried to get back to work. He couldn't. He kept watching. The girl was meticulous. She cleaned every inch carefully, with love. Then she knelt, prayed, and then stood up, put the cloth back in her backpack, and left. Friday, the same thing. Saturday, Marcus was in the garden with Helen when he heard the footsteps. 3:30, like clockwork. Helen looked. "Who's that girl?" "I don't know." "She shows up here every day." "Every day?" "Since Tuesday." Helen watched Sarah cleaning the statue. "How sweet. We should thank her. Leave her alone. She's just a strange kid." But Marcus kept watching. Monday, week 2. Sarah arrived with wildflowers, small, yellow, and white, probably picked along the way. She placed them at the statue's feet carefully before starting to clean. Marcus was at the window watching as he had every day. Something in him gave in. He went downstairs. Sarah turned when she heard the door. "Hi, sir." Marcus descended the steps slowly, stopped a few meters away from her. "You brought flowers." Sarah looked at the flowers at the statue's feet. "I thought they were pretty. I thought she'd like them." Marcus was silent for a moment, just looking at that 7-year-old girl who came every day without fail. "Why do you do this?" "I already told you, sir. I need to pray for a sick woman." "And how do you know there's a sick woman here?" Sarah hesitated, looked at the statue, then back at him. "I had a dream. The lady in blue showed me." Marcus rubbed his face. "A dream?" "Yes." He should laugh. He should tell her to go home. He should, but he couldn't. "And this woman in your dream, what was she like?" Sarah closed her eyes for a second, remembering. "Brown hair down to here." She pointed to her shoulders, and she looked very tired. Marcus felt his breath catch. Helen. Brown hair to her shoulders, always tired lately. "Anything else?" Sarah opened her eyes, looked straight at him. "She sleeps in a small room with stars on the ceiling." The world stopped. Marcus stood completely still, not breathing. The guest room, the old room they had prepared for a baby that never came. Helen slept there now, and there were glow-in-the-dark star stickers on the ceiling they had never taken down. Nobody knew that. Nobody. How? His voice came out hoarse. How do you know that? The lady showed me in a dream. You went into my house, looked through the windows? Sarah shook her head. No, sir, I never went in. I just saw it in the dream. Marcus took a step back, then another. It doesn't make sense. Someone told you it had to be someone. I don't know anyone here, sir. Her voice was calm, honest. I only came because the lady asked me to. Marcus looked at her, searching for signs of a lie. But all he saw was a 7-year-old girl, sincere, scared by his reaction, but steady. Her name, Marcus whispered. Do you know her name? Sarah nodded slowly. Helen. Marcus felt his legs weaken. He had to hold on to the railing. Helen, the room with stars, brown hair, sick. There was no explanation. I have to go now, sir. Sarah picked up her backpack. But I'll come back tomorrow. I'll keep praying for her. And she left. Marcus stayed there, standing in front of the house, staring at the freshly cleaned statue, the wildflowers at its feet. And for the first time in a long while he felt afraid, because either that girl was part of some very elaborate fraud, or something impossible was happening. That night, Marcus couldn't work. Helen came into the office. Are you coming to bed? Helen, do you believe in miracles? She stopped. Marcus never asked questions like that. Why? Just answer. Helen thought. I think I do. Why? Marcus turned to her. For the first time in months, he really looked at her. That girl, the one who cleans the statue, she knows your name. So? And she's never seen you, never talked to neighbors. She lives far from here. There's no way she could know. Helen stepped closer. Then, how does she know? She says that the Virgin Mary showed you to her in a dream. Helen fell silent. I know it sounds crazy, Marcus continued, but she knows things she shouldn't know. What kind of things? Your name, that you're sick, that you need prayer. Helen sat down in the chair beside the desk. What else did she say? That she'll keep praying for you every day. Tears began running down Helen's face. Helen? Someone is praying for me, she whispered. Someone who doesn't even know me is praying for me. Marcus knelt before her. Do you believe her? I want to believe. God, Marcus, I need to believe in something. Nadbia. On Tuesday, Helen was waiting by the window. 3:30. Sarah appeared. Helen went downstairs and opened the door before Marcus could. Sarah stopped when she saw a woman at the door. Are you Helen? Helen walked down the steps, tears already falling. I am, and you're Sarah. Sarah smiled. The lady showed me you, but you're even prettier in person. Helen knelt and hugged Sarah. The girl was surprised for a second, then hugged her back. Thank you, Helen whispered. Thank you for praying for me. I'll keep praying every day. Marcus watched from the doorway, not understanding, but feeling he was witnessing something important. Weeks passed. Sarah came every day, religiously, 3:30 in the afternoon. She cleaned the statue, prayed. Sometimes Helen came down and stayed with her. They talked about simple things, school, flowers, nothing deep, but real. Marcus started waiting too, without admitting it, but he waited. One day in April, Sarah arrived without her cloth. She just knelt and prayed longer than usual. When she finished, she looked toward the house. Marcus was at the window. Sarah waved. Marcus went down. Is everything okay? Sarah looked serious, concerned. The lady showed me something this morning. What? Helen will get bad news. Today or tomorrow. But the lady said not to be afraid. Marcus felt his blood run cold. What kind of news? I don't know, only that it will be hard. But to pray harder. That afternoon, at 5:40, Marcus's phone rang. Dr. Harrison. Mr. Sullivan, I received the results of Helen's latest tests. Marcus closed his eyes. And? The treatment isn't working as we hoped. The condition has progressed. What does that mean? It means we need to consider other options. There's an experimental procedure, very risky, but it may be the last chance. Marcus hung up without really answering. He went up to Helen's room. She was reading. Helen. She looked at his face and understood. The doctor called. He called. And? The treatment didn't work. Helen closed the book slowly, placed it on the nightstand, looked at her hands. I already knew. How? I can feel it, Marcus. I'm getting worse. Marcus sat down on the bed, held her hand. There's a new procedure, experimental, but it's risky. How risky? 30% chance. Helen gave a humorless laugh. 30%. Do you want to try it? She looked at him for a long moment. Will you be there? What do you mean? Will you be there with me this time? Or will you be in meetings while I go through this alone again? The question cut deep. Helen. Because if I have to do this alone, maybe it's better not to do it at all. Marcus squeezed her hand. I'll be there. I swear. You always swear, Marcus. This time I will, because I finally understand. Understand what? What I'm about to lose. Helen began to cry. Marcus pulled her into an embrace, and for the first time in years, he was present, completely present. The next morning, Marcus went downstairs at 3:20. He waited in front of the house. 3:30. Sarah appeared at the corner. When she saw Marcus waiting, she ran. Mr. Marcus, the news? They came yesterday. You were right. Sarah took his hand. Miss Helen said it's going to be okay. She'll need to be very strong. I know. Marcus knelt down to her level. Sarah, can you teach me how to pray? Sarah smiled. You just talk to her, for real, with your heart. And there on the sidewalk, Marcus prayed for the first time in his life. Helen underwent the procedure in the second week. Marcus canceled everything, every meeting, every appointment, every client. For the first time in years of marriage, he was there, totally there. On the day of the surgery, Marcus arrived at 5 a.m, held Helen's hand, kissed her forehead. I love you, he said. And this time, he felt every word. The surgery lasted 7 hours. Marcus stayed in the waiting room, didn't open his laptop, didn't check emails, didn't take calls. He just prayed. When Dr. Harrison finally appeared, Marcus stood up so fast he almost fell. How is she? The surgery went well, Mr. Sullivan. Now we wait. The next 72 hours are critical. Marcus spent those 72 hours in the hospital, and he prayed, constantly. On the third day, Marcus left the hospital for a few hours. When he got home at 3:30 in the afternoon, Sarah was there, in front of the statue, kneeling, praying. Marcus stopped the car, got out. Sarah opened her eyes at the sound of his footsteps. Mr. Marcus, how is she? Marcus approached, tired, exhausted. But something in him calmed when he saw that little girl there. The surgery went well. Now we wait. Sarah stood up. Can I keep praying? Please. I'll keep coming. Every day, until she's better. Thank you, Sarah. And she left. Marcus stayed there for a while longer, looking at the clean statue, the flowers Sarah left every day. For the first time in weeks, he felt something close to hope. On the fourth day, Helen woke up. Her eyes opened slowly, confused, searching, and they found Marcus there. You're here? I am, and I'm not leaving, she cried. The following weeks were terrible. Helen was weak, constant pain, nausea from the medication. Moments when she wanted to give up, but Marcus was there, every day, every hour. He brought her favorite daisies to the room, read aloud to her. Slowly, Helen began to get better. It's not common, Dr. Harrison said during the checkups. The response is far above what we expected. Will she be okay? It's still early, but yes, I think so. 2 months later, Helen was discharged. Marcus had changed. He started working part-time, Dinners came back, conversations came back, small weekend trips, and Marcus spent hours in the garden with Helen, tending to the yellow daisies. 6 months after the surgery, on a sunny day, Marcus and Helen were in the garden when the doorbell rang. It was Sarah. "Can I come in?" "Of course." Sarah stepped inside, saw the garden for the first time in person. "The daisies! They're just like in the dream." Helen hugged her. They stayed in the garden, talked, laughed. When the sun began to set, Sarah had to go. Helen hugged her tightly. "Thank you for everything." Sarah smiled and left. Marcus and Helen stayed there. "Do you believe now?" Helen asked. Marcus thought for a moment. "I believe that little girl saved your life. Whether it was through a miracle, doctors, or just forcing me to wake up, I don't know, but I believe she was sent by the Virgin Mary." "So do I." That night, Marcus cleaned the statue. He removed leaves, wiped it carefully, placed fresh flowers, and he gave thanks. Because sometimes the miracle isn't just healing the body, it's healing everything that was broken long before. It's remembering to look, to be present, to truly live. And sometimes all you need is a 7-year-old girl with an old rag and unshakable faith. And look, if you made it this far to the end of Marcus, Helen, and Sarah's story, do one thing for me. Write in the comments, "Yellow daisies," so I'll know you believe that miracles from the Virgin Mary still happen. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Share this video with someone who needs to renew their hope today. May the Virgin Mary continue to bless and protect you and your family. Amen.